Judge Andrew Stone had ruled his courtroom like a king for over 2 decades, intimidating lawyers, silencing objections, and bending protocol to his will. So when Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi stood before him with damning evidence in a high-profile corruption trial, he did what he always did. He mocked her, dismissed her, and tried to humiliate her in front of a packed gallery. But that morning, something was different. Bondi didn't flinch. She didn't back down. Instead, she calmly revealed a paper trail of corruption that reached straight into the judge's chambers. And within the hour, the man who once silenced others with a gavel would be led away in handcuffs, his legacy shattered not by outrage, but by truth. The federal courthouse in downtown Miami was quiet at 8:57 a.m., the kind of hush that settles before something breaks. The security line had slowed. Reporters in pressed suits glanced at their phones. 2 high school students on a civics field trip whispered to each other, unaware they were about to witness a moment that would end up in their textbooks. Inside Courtroom 5B, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above the polished oak benches. The air smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and coffee gone cold. The case on the docket was United States v. Harrington Industries, a complex, high-profile prosecution involving environmental fraud, offshore accounts, and political back-channeling. But no one was talking about that. Everyone was talking about who would be arguing it. Pam Bondi, Florida's Attorney General, was seated alone at the prosecution table. Her navy suit was pristine, her blonde hair pinned tight. In front of her sat a worn leather folder, a silver pen, and a case file marked confidential. Internal use only. She didn't check her phone. She didn't look around. She just waited perfectly still like a coiled wire. At exactly 9 o'clock, the heavy doors at the rear of the courtroom groaned open. "All rise," the bailiff called out, and the room obeyed. Judge Andrew H. Stone entered with the gravity of a man who had long stopped questioning his own authority. 62, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, Stone had been on the bench for over 2 decades. He was known for his meticulousness, his short temper, and his disdain for theatrics in the courtroom. He didn't look at Bondi as he took his seat. "This court is now in session," he announced, his voice taut and clipped. "Let's begin." Bondi stood. Her heels made a soft click against the tile as she rose. "Your Honor, the prosecution respectfully requests the court to admit newly obtained evidence regarding foreign wire transfers linked to Harrington Industries' executive accounts." Judge Stone's eyes narrowed. "You're introducing new evidence at this stage?" Bondi nodded calmly. "Yes, Your Honor. The records were secured last week via subpoena. They're directly tied to fraudulent transfers." Stone leaned back in his chair, removing his glasses with deliberate slowness. "Miss Bondi," he said, his voice laced with irritation, "this isn't some cable courtroom drama. You don't get to discover smoking guns during commercial breaks." A few snickers rippled from the defense table. Bondi didn't blink. "Respectfully, Your Honor," she replied, "the records were obtained lawfully and are materially relevant." Stone interrupted again. "The timing is convenient. Perhaps next week you'll uncover Jimmy Hoffa's remains in the defendant's filing cabinet." This time, laughter wasn't stifled. Bondi didn't react. She didn't argue. Instead, she looked directly at the judge. "We're not here to entertain, Your Honor. We're here to prosecute a case involving crimes that affect thousands of Americans." Stone banged his gavel. "Motion denied. This court will not indulge last-minute theatrics by prosecutors desperate to revive a dying case." A muscle twitched in Bondi's jaw, but her voice remained even. "Then may it be entered into the record that the court has denied the admission of this evidence without review?" Stone's eyes narrowed. "You may enter whatever you wish. I'll be sure the appellate court has something to read when they overturn your case." In the gallery, several reporters leaned forward. Something had shifted. Not just tension, but calculation. As Bondi returned to her seat, she didn't speak. She didn't shake her head. She just opened her leather folder, slid a single document forward, and placed her hand flat across it. What the judge didn't know, what no one knew, was that the very document he just rejected would change the course of not just the case, but his entire career. When the court recessed for lunch, Judge Stone was the first to leave. He didn't linger or glance at Bondi. He simply rose, adjusted his robe, and disappeared into his chambers with a parting glare that didn't go unnoticed. Pam Bondi remained seated. Around her, the courtroom buzzed. Reporters exchanged glances. Courtroom sketch artists flipped to fresh pages. Behind her, one of her deputies leaned in. "He's trying to break you," the young man whispered. Bondi didn't look up from her notes. Let him try. When she returned from the short break, everything about her demeanor had shifted, but only slightly. There was no grand gesture, no raised voice. Just a new kind of stillness. The kind that unnerved. Miss Bondi, Judge Stone said as he re-entered the courtroom and took his seat. Do you plan to waste more of the court's time this afternoon? Bondi rose slowly. Your Honor, I have a motion to present. You've already tried that this morning. Motion denied. This is a different motion, Your Honor. Stone sighed audibly. Proceed. Briefly. Bondi turned and nodded to one of the two unfamiliar attorneys seated quietly behind her. He rose, approached the bench, and handed a sealed blue folder to the bailiff. Your Honor, Bondi said clearly, this is a motion to request your immediate recusal from this case. The room stopped breathing. On what grounds? Stone demanded, voice sharp. On the grounds, Bondi continued, her voice steady, of judicial bias, personal financial interest in the outcome of this case, and documented misconduct related to the assignment of this trial. The judge's jaw tightened. This is absurd. I'm prepared to enter exhibits A through G into the record, she continued, including sworn affidavits from two of your former clerks, financial records linking your brother-in-law to Harrington Industries subsidiaries, and most concerning, a digital transcript of a conversation you had last month at the Cypress Club with Charles Harrington himself. The courtroom erupted. Judge Stone's face flushed crimson. This is a desperate attempt to hijack these proceedings. Bondi remained calm. The Department of Justice's Public Integrity Section has already been briefed. This morning, the evidence has also been submitted to the chief judge of this district. Stone slammed his gavel. This is MY Courtroom. Bondi leaned forward slightly. No courtroom belongs to a single man, Your Honor. Not even yours. A bailiff approached the bench, whispering something urgently in the judge's ear. Stone's expression faltered. He grabbed the envelope the bailiff offered and tore it open. The order was brief, direct from the circuit court. All proceedings were to be paused pending a review of Bondi's recusal motion. Effective immediately. Stone's face lost all color. This court is in recess, he muttered. But the moment he stood to leave, another voice rang out. Your Honor, Bondi said. One final item. Stone paused. Go on. She nodded to her deputy, who passed her a final blue folder. Exhibit H, she said. A copy of 5 wire transfers from Harrington Industries to offshore accounts linked to entities under your financial oversight. Stone stared at her, speechless. Sir, she added, we also have testimony and court records demonstrating that rulings in favor of Harrington followed each of those transactions within 30 days. 2 men in the back row stood silently and flashed their FBI badges. In that instant, Judge Stone knew he had lost control. Of the room. Of the case. Of his legacy. Bondi stepped back from the bench and folded her hands neatly. We're not here for theatrics, she said. We're here for the truth. The courtroom had never been so still. Judge Stone, once towering in authority, now sat frozen behind the bench. The blue folders on his desk felt heavier than any gavel he had ever slammed. The weight wasn't just evidence, it was consequence. As the FBI agent stepped forward, Stone's voice cracked. This is an outrage, he said, rising to his feet. I demand. You'll have due process, one of the agents interrupted, firmly but respectfully. Just like everyone else. They cuffed him without spectacle. No drama. Just the clink of steel, the shuffling of polished shoes on marble. The gallery didn't cheer. They just watched. Pam Bondi didn't smile. She didn't flinch. She stood motionless as the man who had tried to humiliate her was led away. Not because of pride, but because the system, at last, was doing what it was meant to do. Uphold the law. Equally. As Stone passed her, he muttered, You think you've won? Bondi looked at him, not with hatred, but with something far more unsettling, conviction. This was never about winning, she said softly. It was about what's right. The doors closed behind him. Reporters dashed from the courtroom. Phones rang. Headlines formed. But Bondi remained. Calm. Steady. She turned to her team. We're not done. The real case, the one that brought us here, still needs justice. And with that, she returned to her notes. As Judge Andrew Stone was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, the silence spoke louder than any gavel ever could. The man who had once commanded fear and obedience now faced the very justice system he tried to manipulate. But this story wasn't about revenge, it was about accountability. Pam Bondi didn't raise her voice or seek applause. She relied on facts, law, and unwavering composure. And in doing so, she reminded a nation that no one, not even a federal judge, is above the law. The courtroom may have returned to order, but the system it represents was forever changed. Across the country, Americans saw that power unchecked can be confronted, not with fury, but with truth. And as Bondi quietly walked away, the gold seal of justice shone a little brighter. Not because it had been defended with force, but because it had been reclaimed with courage.